Hello everybody. Well, it's a beautiful day today. It's Burns night and it's cold and crisp. Now the storm, unpronounceable, has been and gone. This afternoon I hope you can join me on a walk around the Ramsgate Historic Quarter. So let's get started. Now this was the entrance to the Old Town Bar, approach from the northwest. There's Asda. It leads right down here into the town centre. There's some of the oldest buildings in this area, and in more dangerous times they use Marines stationed in the car park just to keep an eye on things, because things could be a bit sketchy at times. But it's been restored by the regeneration scheme. Now you can read all about it online. It's a long-term conservation and regeneration scheme. Ramsgate has more listed buildings than Bath. Ramsgate has 445 grade 1 and grade 2 listed buildings. Now where I am standing was the site of Captain Abbott's house. He was an 18th century sea captain, and at one time in this area a lot of the captains who lived round here enjoyed orchards, gardens and all manner of countrified things, which of course has gone, and there was corn from the nearby windmills as well dotted around the town, and all that has gone. It would have been a lot more countrified than it is today. It was demolished. I have no idea why. I'm not sure when exactly it was demolished, but if we look at the house next to it, this also is 18th century and was modernised and extended. At first it was shops and then it became living accommodation. So you can see up here the fenestration, the windows, and that brick-like architecture hanging down, that decorative architecture fenestration. Well, Captain Abbott's house had the same fenestration as this property here, and you can see what was shop windows. This is clearly the shop windows, and there would have been a few of them. So let's continue. Round here you will notice as you go along that there's quite a lot of Dutch architecture, the Dutch style, which was really common in the 18th century. You can also see fine examples of this in Colchester. The Oddfellows Hall is from the 18th century, the early part of the 18th century in fact, and it was updated in the 20th century, but it's two-storey and you've got the boxed eaves as well, which are characteristic of this property, and it's now used as a social club venue. And just across the street is the old Spread Eagle. Now this has been empty for some considerable time. This was an old coaching inn, and there's been a lot of arguing about what to do with it. In 2009, the car park here was a contention because they wanted to use it for housing development, and there had been ideas of changing it into maybe multi-occupancy living, but that hasn't been agreed to either. It's such a shame that a fine early 18th century building has been left dilapidated in such a way. However, the Conservation Society are looking for a building to develop as a venue for historic skills. People might learn, for example, ironmongery or basket weaving, all manner of traditional crafts, wood turning that are on the decline, maybe even shoemaking. That would be good, wouldn't it? So they're looking for a building for historic skills learning. So who knows, this could be ideal. Otherwise, other suitable uses might be as a restaurant, for example, or other venue, rather than multiple occupancy. That sadly isn't doing anything. Free house established 1847. All shut up. Again, such a shame. And this is the premises of what was Rebecca and E. Moss, who lived here in 1851. They were the sole occupants of Miss Beer's private school. Now here we have a fine Dutch gable. These are early 18th century. Numbers 135, 133, 131 and 129. These are all listed buildings, and 133 and 134 have rusticated coins, but they're absolutely beautiful. Then we have Monkton House, which is a 18th century mansion, and this used to be Ramsgate's employment exchange before it was converted into flats. At the end of the Dutch Row we have the Priest House, which has been in the same family for generations. A fine building. So this is Chatham House Grammar School. This was founded in 1797 by Dr. William Humble, and it remained an all-boys grammar school until 2011, when it merged with Clarendon Grammar School. And you've still got the original sign, and then you can see you've got lovely old shops. These are also old buildings. A number of independent shops that have popped up over the last 10 years or so. However, an article in the Express Online today was saying that there are 65 shop units empty, and 1 in 4 shop units are empty. And alas, parts of the High Street and also parts of King Street are now very dilapidated, which is a terrible shame, especially since the global incident a few years ago. There's quite a lot of antisocial behaviour as well. The latest enterprise to close its door after only 1 year is the fabulous community space Sugar Rush, which opened on the High Street just a year ago, because a large part of that being the landlord's rents. It's quite a blow to the community. Clearly more needs to be done about historic places like Ramsgate and other seaside towns and places where there is such a strong cultural heritage. And in fact, Ramsgate is the only royal harbour in the UK, and we need to be encouraging investors into the area to make it attractive for those who want to visit the area and enjoy what it has to offer. This tells you that the school was used as a Canadian voluntary aid detachment hospital during the First World War. And on the 24th of August 1940, during the Second World War, 29 people lost their lives during the murder raids. The German attack destroyed 78 houses and left 700 badly damaged. Chatham Street and Margate Road were central to the devastation, with 13 people killed. And in fact, Ramsgate, which I'll show you on another episode of this mini-series, was also well known for its tunnels. There was huge bombings during the Second World War of the town, and how so many listed buildings survived, goodness only knows. But there were people who spent 4 years of their lives living in the tunnels. And a few years ago, December 2019 to be precise, my mum-in-law and I met a lady on her mobility scooter in Ramsgate town who was one of those who had lived and grown up as a child in the tunnels and had a lung condition as a result. And she was a lovely lady. And then here we've got railings. Notice all the railings. Now, of course, during the wars, a lot of railings got melted down for ammunition and other uses during the war effort. It's nice to see we've still got the beautiful railings. And this is a whole, if you like, a basement area as well, down below. And in character with an 18th century building, note the fenestration and the beautiful windows down at the top. So this over here is Townley's Mansion House. This is where Mary Townley lived. She built this in 1780, and she was a socialite and used to have these grand balls. And Queen Victoria, when she was still a princess, stayed here in 1820. And Mary Townley had a rather unusual occupation for a woman in the 18th and early 19th century. She was an architect, and she designed a number of other buildings in the town. This is being done up again at the moment. Look at the gorgeous figures, the statues in those windows. It's stunning. Now, in the 1960s, the Farleys, a local family, bought the mansion house to save it from developers, and then they later sold it on to another private owner. Now, there's the ghost sign for Farley's Furnishers, and this building here was the headquarters of the Duke of Wellington during the Napoleonic Wars. Now, Farley's today, they have 3 shops. They did have more, but after the global incident, they downsized them a bit, so to speak. So they've got a showroom in St Lawrence, Ramsgate, which is by the little Tesco, and they've got a showroom in Canterbury, and they've got one in Margate. Now in its 4th generation, so John Farley, who was the boss of the business, has passed it on to his son Oliver. And I once had the pleasure of meeting John Farley at a bus stop several years ago, His car was in for service and he was having to get the bus to go and collect his car, and he introduced himself to me. And it's a fine building, and this was once the Duke of Wellington's headquarters during the Napoleonic Wars. This is a fine example of a row of Georgian houses. You can see the style, very tall, and the steps up to the front door, the grand doorway, and also the basement level there with the sash windows and the railings. Look at the beautiful masonry work around the doorway here, and look at that as well. That reminds me of the sort of thing you'd see in the blacksmiths, that door on the left. We're now going to go in and have a drink at the Rose of England. This is a really lovely pub. It's still sort of halfway down the high street. Look at that lovely old balcony here above that yellow door. And here again you've got some lovely 18th century shops. This one over here, the Wooden Box Gallery, if you look above, it was a grocer's and provisions store. You can still see the old writing over the bricked up windows. So we're in the pub now, and we're having a lovely drink, and this too is an 18th century building. It's got some gorgeous features and it's really cosy, and I believe that it's been in the same family since 1984. So cheers to that too. Cheers. St George the Martyr, beautiful parish church. Now this was built around 1803, and back in the day they were well known for their soup kitchen, and over 200 years later they're doing it again, and they also have a community shop. They spend an awful lot of time serving the community. It's a wonderful church. Now this church is also well known for the resting place of John le Mesurier as well, who you may recall was Sergeant Arthur Wilson in Dad's Army from 1968 to 1977. And he lived in Ramsgate for many years. He lived at number 8 London Road, which now has a blue plaque. That's right over by the West Cliff. And after he passed away, his widow Joan, who was also his biographer, lived on Hadray Street, and she died there in 2021. And he is buried in the churchyard here. We're on Broad Street at the moment. We've got the Micro Museum just at one end. Dan's been there. He really had a nice time with his friend last year. And then there's another museum next to it, which seems to be a music type museum. And they're both cash places, which is good. And this one is an old dispensary. I'm not sure what it's used for now. It reminds me of a school building or something of that nature. We've got some fine buildings here. These are 3-storey buildings. They're probably Victorian, late Victorian most likely. That one might be a bit older because it's got a basement. A lot of Victorian properties did have cellars, but usually when they've got the basement like that, they are a little bit older. With these, where you've got the step in off the front street, they're usually towards the end of the 19th century. My mum's house was built in 1883, and she had a couple of steps actually off the pavement.
Between the churchyard and Church Street.
These are all Victorian properties in different styles. These are earlier on in the 19th century. They're probably mid to late 19th century because they have the basements there. So these ones over here, Pig Alley, these are probably sort of early to mid 19th century cottages, whereas those ones are 1870s. You can see the slightly different style, and that one's more bowed as well. But you can see they've been renovated because of the windows. So the sash windows, but they've been renovated and cleaned, the brickwork's been cleaned up. That's got a piece of wood down as well, so these are older. And this is the old telephone exchange, and you've got School Lane just to the left of it. Again, you've got a nice little bit of wrought iron work as well. Now you probably noticed there's quite a lot of flint here, this side as well. Flint was typically used in Ramsgate in the 17th and 18th centuries for house building, and you can always tell when a building is quite old because there will be some flint work somewhere. I mean, that obviously has been repaired, but the original part of the building will be at least 200 to 300 years old. Here is the front elevation of that flint lined wall, and as you see, it is quite an old building. It's got a lovely deep basement area, and it goes round in a nice curve as well. And you've got this feature here with the windows and the curves as well. It's now flats, but at least it's still here, it's survived. And this house just here was where John Le Mesurier's wife lived for many years until her death in 2021. And a claim to fame is that Dan, a week before her death, tuned her 2 pianos. And then sadly, and yes, she was at home, and sadly within a week or so she passed away. I don't think that John Le Mesurier was always an easy person to live with, because I think he suffered from depression and he drank a lot. And in fact, when he passed away in 1983, aged just 71, the cause of death was cirrhosis of the liver. It's very sad because he was a real gentleman and a very talented actor. And before he lived in Ramsgate, he lived in Margate with Hattie Jakes, who was his second wife. Joan was his third. And maybe on a future trip we will take in the sights and sounds of Margate. So I hope you have enjoyed being with me on this little walk around the historic quarter of Ramsgate, and I look forward to seeing you again soon for the next one. So until then, bye for now.